Welcome back to Lexus Revival Garage. My name is Mark, and in today's video, our 2013 RX 350 recently hit 200,000 miles, and we're going to give it a tune-up today. Before we get started, let's discuss the term tune-up. That's something that most modern cars, if not all modern cars, don't really have to have done anymore. Cars are no longer carbureted. They also most of them don't need to have valves adjusted and things like that. But if you know your car's history, we can do sort of the modern version of a tune-up, and that's what we're going to be doing here today. For those of you that don't know, this car was actually my parents' car for the first 11 years of its life. And they graciously gave it to me when they upgraded to a 2024 RX. So this car is technically two owners, but it's the same family. So I have a pretty good idea of what the history of this vehicle is. Now, my parents are not the most mechanically inclined. They have been known to let some maintenance items slide. And the two things that we're going to be focused on today in this modern tune-up is going to be replacing the spark plugs and the coolant, because neither one have been changed since it left the factory in late 2012. And before I get started on doing the spark plugs, I did want to mention that right as it hit 200,000 miles, I did take it to the local Toyota dealership, and I had them of course, give it a once-over, see if there's anything else that needs to be done. But I also had them do an oil change and brake system flush. I could have done those things on my own, but I just didn't want to have to deal with the brake fluid predominantly and just the leftover oil. Just figured it would be easier to have them do it, and they didn't charge me too much. So went ahead and had them do that. So those two things have been done. Also, before we get started, I want to go over a few things that will just be a good idea to at least check, if not replace, while you're considering doing your modern tune-up on your own car. And those are things that I've actually replaced on the vehicle before I even had started the YouTube channel, and we'll go over those now. The first thing that I replaced after I got it was the windshield wipers. I was actually driving it back here to Georgia, and I ran into a pretty severe downpour and noticed the wipers weren't doing anything. Luckily, my parents did keep the original frames, so all I had to do was replace the actual rubber parts here. Just popped it out and slid the new one back in. But the old wipers were really not doing this car any favors, and it made the drive much better afterwards. And actually, I kind of lucked out because the worst rain happened right after Birmingham, which is where I purchased the wiper blades. So, and of course, another thing that I already mentioned, the brake flush was recently completed on this car by my local Toyota dealership. So that's also something that you'll want to check around a major mileage milestone like this. Now come the headlights. This car had very hazed over headlights from spending so much time in the Texas heat. So I actually took this to a local company near me here in North Georgia. They polished the headlight lenses and also the fog light lenses. Don't ever underestimate the power of a good headlight restoration. It made a night and day difference on the nighttime visibility for the headlights on this car. The focus of today's video is to change the spark plugs here and here, and the mass airflow sensor. We're going to clean that, and the throttle body plate, I'm going to clean that because it is quite involved on this vehicle, and I don't foresee this job being particularly fun. So we're going to go ahead and get started on that. And then once we finish that, we're going to drain the coolant and bleed the coolant. And I'll show you how to do that, because also that's a more involved process than your typical, older Toyota or Lexus, because we can't ever make things too easy in the modern automotive world, can we? So Let's go ahead and start taking things apart. So I might go ahead and change the front bank of spark plugs here just because they will be the easiest and it will give me a good idea of what I'm kind of working with when I get to the rear. All right, let's get our coil packs removed. Okay, first spark plug coming out. That is what a 200,000 mile spark plug looks like. The Toyota dealership did point out this to me, that they can see the hash mark there. Apparently that's an indicator that can be used to determine if they need to be replaced or not. This one is darker. This one might look the worst of the three. And here we have 3 new OEM iridium spark plugs, if I don't break it. Let's compare these two. You can see there. And then on the bottom, maybe they weren't messing with me about the hash mark there, because the new one does not have that. All right, let's put these in. Okay, got the front ones done. Now we're gonna move on to the rear bank. I'm not looking forward to this. We're starting out with removing the windshield wipers. That's gonna be a 14 millimeter. All right, and the time it took me to replace half of the spark plugs is what it took me just to remove this windshield wiper cowling. Now we have to remove the windshield wiper motor. Now, for probably the dumbest part of this whole thing, we have to disconnect the bolts that hold in the strut. Now we have to take apart, or remove I should say, this intake right here. I'm going to go ahead and probably going to disconnect the air hoses over here and the air box and everything and go from there. ahead and clean this out. I have a video on how to do this. We're gonna let this dry while we move forward here. Okay, got that little section of hose off. Now we're going to work on cleaning the throttle body. That is much better. That is 200,000 miles of gunk built up. So very nice. Since we're changing out the coolant today and the fact that that throttle body will be moved and it does have coolant lines coming in and out, to avoid accidental spillage, figured it'd be a good idea to go ahead and drain the coolant. And we'll let that drain out. While the coolant is draining, I'm gonna go ahead and tackle these two rear bolts on the intake manifold here. At this point, I'm curious as to what will be done first, the spark plugs or the coolant that's still draining down there. Since the connectors on the front side, all three of them broke, it occurred to me that it might be a good idea to see if we can keep the connectors connected in the rear and take them all out at once. That way to prevent us from having to disconnect them. I'm gonna try to do that. If we can do it, great. If not, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Well, I think this should be able to come out. Got it. Okay. Whew. Now we can remove the spark plugs. There's the first one. Continuing the trend from the other side, they seem, the further back they are in the engine, the worse they seem to look. Last one. The camera's really not doing it justice. It's extremely dark brown in person. New spark plugs going in. All right, we got the three on the back side put in. Now we got to snake our coil packs back in there. Here's this one. Back in. There's the second one. And the third. And just like that. All right, now the intake can go back on. I've got all of this put back together. I'm just missing a few covers on top. The coolant, as I mentioned earlier, has drained, but we still have some coolant in our reservoir, so I'm going to use the pump to pump the fluid into our container down here. So here we go. Okay, for those of you who've never done coolant on a 2GR Toyota V6 before, it's not as straightforward as most vehicles are. There is actually a bleeder valve right here that is going to allow coolant to escape from it while you're warming the engine up and bleeding the air through it and everything. So you have to loosen this just to open it a little bit. You need to stick a clear piece of tube with a 1/4 inch internal diameter, and then we're going to fasten the tube to our coolant funnel here. This is a no spill funnel. Wonderful investment if you do a lot of work on vehicles. Highly recommend this. So let me go get our hose. We'll connect it from here to here, and then I'll show you what we're going to do next. So you can probably tell the level of the coolant is roughly the same as the crease of or not the crease, but the turn of the funnel here. At this point, we're gonna go ahead and turn on the engine, but you need to have something, either a helper or some sort of item to help you depress the pedal, because we need to keep the idle at around between 2,000 and 2,500 RPMs throughout this entire process. The fluid going back down. Here we go. When it starts to come back up, you'll see air bubbles coming. And all these air bubbles run out. Right at about 2,500 RPM. Well, not anymore. Should still be above 2,000 though. Still seeing some bubbling coming up from the bottom. At a certain point, this may get a little bit more violent. That's to be expected. We're essentially waiting for this to become a steady stream and overflowing into our funnel. You're not done until that is happening, so. The air bubbles are getting less and less here. Going back down. This is exactly what we should be seeing. Here comes the violence right here. See all this air coming from the heater core. Starting to splash out of the funnel now. Here we go. Lots of air coming up now. Slowing down now, so we should be on the home stretch. We just gotta wait for a solid line of coolant to come up the tube. Here it comes now. Here it comes. It's gonna start overflowing into the funnel. Almost there, just cresting the top here. Open some more bubbles up. But I believe that should be okay. And we're starting to steam. I can see it now. In case anyone's wondering, it's been 11 minutes and 10 seconds since we started the car. Alright, now I'm going to disconnect our cable, or our hose rather. I'm going to close off the bleeder. You will spill some coolant here, that's to be expected, but you can clean it off with some water later on. And we have successfully bled our coolant. Got some hot coolant. Right. I'm going to put our stopper in here. Going to undo our hose and our clamp. For those of you that don't know what a spill-free coolant funnel is, the coolant you still have in your funnel remains in there. Now what we're going to do, what do I do with the leftover coolant in the funnel? Well, not letting that go to waste. Just going to put the remainder in the reservoir. Right. Of course that's not nearly full enough, so get our bottle here and fill the rest of it up. Gonna fill it up to the hot line since the engine is hot and the coolant is hot. Or until I run out of coolant in this bottle, whichever comes first. That's about there. Well, my work here is not yet done. I still have to put all this stupid plastic back on the engine, but this is it. And there you have it. Our project is done and the RX 350 is officially caught up on all of its scheduled maintenance. So we did the spark plugs, we did the coolant, both of which had never been changed before. And then we also had the oil change, the brake fluid changed. So at this point, our tune-up, if you will, is basically done on this car, and it is caught up with all of its regular scheduled maintenance. And so we're good to go with just the basic, 5,000 mile oil change and tire rotation intervals for a good while. So I hope this video was helpful and informative, and I hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and stay tuned to the channel. There's plenty more content from where this came from, and I hope everybody has a wonderful day. Take care, everybody.